Hello, I'm Susan Iman, the Executive Director of the Lethbridge Sport Council. We are proud to welcome you to the YQL Stories, which stands for Your Quality Life Stories, where we have the privilege to talk with friends we've met through sport. We're pleased to have you join us to hear about their experiences and explore how sport and active living can impact your quality life.
Hello, my name is Alex Engel, your host of the YQL Stories podcast. Our guest this episode is Rachel Nicol, a Canadian national team swimmer, three-time All-American, an Olympian, and a Pan American Games champion. Hailing from Lethbridge, Rachel has also successfully obtained her master's degree in kinesiology at the University of Calgary. Throughout our conversation, we discussed her competitive swimming career from the grassroots level all the way to the top of the international stage. I think you'll find our conversation very interesting and engaging. Without further ado, please welcome Rachel Nicol. Today we have a very special guest. We have the pleasure of speaking with an extraordinary athlete whose dedication and resilience have propelled her to the top of the swimming world. Rachel Nicol, originally from Regina, Saskatchewan, and raised in Alberta, Lethbridge, Alberta, has made a significant impact on the international swimming stage. She won bronze at the 100-meter breaststroke and silver at the 4x100 medley relay at the 2015 Pan American Games. She finished fifth in both the 100-meter breaststroke and the 4x100 medley relay at the 2016 Rio Olympics. Rachel also earned a bronze medal in the 4x100 medley relay at the 2022 World Aquatics Championships, and most recently, she captured gold in both the 100-meter breaststroke and 4x100 medley relay at the 2023 Pan American Games in Chile. Additionally, as a student athlete at Southern Methodist University, she was named Conference USA Freshman of the Year in 2012, earned All-American Athlete Conference Academic Honors in 2014, and is a three-time All-American. Rachel's journey is one of perseverance, excellence, and a deep commitment to her community. Today, we want to congratulate Rachel on her remarkable career and her recent retirement from competitive swimming. Her journey is a testament to hard work, determination, the pursuit of excellence, and we are very excited for her to share her story with us today. Welcome, Rachel. It is wonderful to have you with us today. How's it going?
Good. Thank you. Thanks for that great introduction, and I'm really happy to be here.
Oh, no worries. That's quite the stack of resume medals and everything with the swimming world. Very, very impressive.
Thank you.
So we'll just get right into it. I understand that you have recently retired, and we'll get into that. But before we go too far, I'd like to start at the beginning. So Rachel, can you tell us kind of how you started swimming? What drew to you at the sport at such a young age?
Yeah, that's a great question to start off with. I started swimming when I was competitively when I was very young at the age of 4. So my career was of competitive swimming was 26 years long. But I started swimming right from the get-go. My dad was a competitive swimmer. He's from Scotland, and he trained and competed there, and moved to Canada in the 80s, I think, and started swimming with the university, with Queen's University. And so I was swimming there as a university student. And so, yeah, I have been involved in swimming since I was a little gal. And I have 2 older brothers, and we all got involved in swimming from a super young age. And I think what kind of drew us to the sport and kept like me and my brothers in the sport for quite a while was just that we ended up being, I think, if I can say, pretty good at it. And so it was, when you're a kid, you like winning and you like doing well at things. And so we did a whole bunch of other sports as well, and things like music too. And I think that's really good for young kids to do all kinds of different activities to have really good physical literacy when they're young. So we didn't, like quote unquote specialize too early, I don't think. But yeah, I swam have been swimming for a very, very long time.
That is awesome. 26 years. Wow. That's a couple strokes in the pool, hey?
Yeah, a few.
So do you have, when you think back to those early years, is there any mentor or any coaches or maybe your parents who really inspired you to continue and to keep that swimming journey going from the age of 4?
Yeah, I think it was, a group effort. Like so many people say in high performance athletes say it's a village that gets people to the world stage, and it really is just even a village to keep kids in sport when they're young, getting, the financial means and having the time and the energy for parents to be able to go and do that and take their kids to these sessions all the time and volunteer work and going to the swim meet. So my parents and my mom really helped out. She, knows how to swim, was never a swimmer, but she really was a huge part of our, like, and I say our because of my brothers as well, our involvement in sport. And without that support from the early days, they really instilled in us perseverance through difficult times. Because even from a young age, I remember hating the cold pool. Like I didn't like it. It wasn't that fun to go to sometimes, and the pools were always so cold. And when you're a little kid, like that's not always the most fun thing to go and do, is to go swim and be cold for an hour and a half or whatever it is. So yeah, like I think my parents just really, really, like, so much of that goes to them, because we wouldn't have been able to, get to where we are today in sport. And myself, obviously, it has stayed with me through my entire life. So those early days, I remember my parents a lot
That's
being
awesome.
there, taking us, my brothers, being there too, and we were all in it together and wanting to try out different things together. So so them as well. And it was really just a family endeavor, I would say. And we would go to the pool on weekends too and have fun as a family in the pool,
Oh,
doing
great.
fun games and things like that. So yeah, for sure, early days. And those, I remember coaches early on in the days in Regina, and like I had a lot of really good coaches when I was young. Like they were really fun. They made things as fun as possible for the little kiddos, because again, swimming can be kind of boring. So they did a really good job there as well.
That's awesome to hear. Yeah, coaches and parents especially. Like I've come from a hockey background myself, and just the parents driving to and from practices, driving
Yeah.
to competition. You don't really think about it too much as a kid, but then when you kind of take a step back and look on the career you've had, it owes a lot to the
Oh,
parents for sure.
and the weekends, like giving up
Oh
your
yeah.
weekend to go watch your kids do that stuff and having to be there for hours. My gosh.
Yeah, it's quite the commitment that parents put in, that's for sure. Going a little bit off script here, I just you mentioned something that you've realized you were pretty good at swimming at a certain age. I was kind of wondering when did you realize you were kind of at that next level or above the competition that you were competing in just like your local place?
Yeah, I think probably around the age of 12 is when I kind of started to see, like, I can't say like I became, yeah, like super conscious of being a good swimmer, but
Yeah.
that's when I started to, make certain times. And I got my first provincial medal. I think then I got third place in 50 breaststroke. And so that's when things, I think, I started to kind of be like, oh, like, and specializing in breaststroke specifically, like that's when things really started to take shape in that way. And I think when I was 12, I broke my first Alberta provincial record as well. So I think that's when things started to pop up, that it wasn't just like, as a little kid, you maybe don't recognize those things, but then it became hard to not see that happening. So
Yeah.
yeah, so then, but it was not a linear path from there, that's for sure. There were a lot of ups and downs. So yeah, and I'm sure we'll get into some of those.
Yeah, actually, that's a great thing to kind of get into. Like it, sport is something that there's lots of ups and downs. The highs are high, the lows can be low. If you have anything that kind of comes to mind in those early days, like you mentioned, you won that, or you broke that provincial record and got that medal at the age of 12. During those times or in your early days, was there any significant challenges you had to overcome? And if so, kind of how did you work through that?
Yeah, so I, like, again, I kind of said, like, I really don't like the cold water. I don't like we also, when I was about 12 years old, I started to go to mornings. So with swimming, you start doing like in the sporting world, doubles, so two practices a day. When you're about 12 years old, a lot of people kind of start around that age. Um and so obviously getting up and going to the pool for 5:30 or 5 o'clock is, it's not the most fun thing to do when you're, again, a little kid. And a big kudos to my parents for pulling me out of pulling me out of bed to get to those practices sometimes. So right, it's a grind. And so those day in and day out things were difficult. I didn't find it too difficult at that age with the work. I didn't mind doing the practices. I didn't mind working hard. I didn't mind those kinds of things, but it was just, yeah, just getting up, going and doing it. And once I was there, I was okay. But I will say though, when I was about 13 or 14, I started to really struggle because that's when I realized that when you're a kid, like you go, because you're growing, you get best times every time you race. So like no problems, like you're shaving seconds off of those races every single time. It's great. Everything's awesome. And then eventually you reach a point where you start not going best times. You start not maybe like winning races. You start to plateau because of growing, or the growing stops, or you're just going through some different things with your body or your mind as a teenager. And so around 13 and 14, there was a bit of a shift in that I started to get a lot of anxiety around racing and having a lot of mental health struggles with racing, and just kind of responding to races that didn't go the way that I wanted them to, or getting really anxious about races that I knew were going to be difficult, that where I could like lose, right? And so because at this point I was doing pretty good at like just like winning races a lot of the time, and so it was my goals were very, very, very like result focused, and of just beating people and getting best times, which makes sense because you really, like at that age, you don't really have a lot of emotional intelligence to know there's other things to look for. And so I was really fortunate in that it was actually my aunt. I was at a meet in Calgary, and she noticed this behavior, and that I was really, really getting upset about an upcoming race. And she talked to my parents, and she had a background in psychology, and just said like, that's not really normal. Maybe you should get her, in touch with a sports psychologist. And sports psychologists now are called mental performance consultants. And so my parents did do that, and I'm really, again, really grateful for them for doing that. And I've worked with the same mental performance consultant, her name is Charlene, since I was that age, so 13 or 14. So we've had I think a 17 or 18-year long relationship at this point. And that was instrumental in changing my outlook on swimming. And I wouldn't have continued to swim, I don't know for how long, but I'm sure I would have stopped swimming at some point pretty early on if it weren't for that help, because it was just too difficult to do on my own. And my parents, that parents have their place in their support, but they don't know, the ins and outs of the psychology of it. So yeah, that was huge. And so when I was a teenager, from probably 13 until I moved away when I was 18/19/20, I that was a time that was very difficult because I wasn't getting best times anymore. And I plateaued for like 6 or 7 years. And as a teenager, like it's just like, well, why am I here? So I struggled with that. That was the main struggle when I was at that point in time. And we did a lot of work, me and Charlene did a lot of work to adjust my thinking to more process for oriented goals of, okay, you want to go these times, you want to do these things in swimming, how are you going to do that, instead of just the result itself. So it became more of a building block kind of an approach, and it was focused a lot more on technique and setting very small and realistic goals every single day in practice, and being really diligent about that. And they're not goals that you hope come to you or that you hope you can do them. It's like, that'll be a challenging thing to do, but I think I can do it. And then you build on that of like, okay, I did this specific skill maybe 30% of the time in practice last week. I think I can bump it up to maybe like 40% this week, and just build on that every single time to the point that you're not thinking about it anymore. And then put it into races and put it into more difficult sets in training. And so that's really the adjustment I had to make fairly early on to continue to progress in the sport, because then when you reach those goals, it's something that you can be happy about because there was really not a lot to be happy about from the results standpoint. So yeah, so that was in a nutshell essentially the big challenge that I came across when I was a teenager. I hated going to practice. I hated going to race because I knew I wasn't going to do well, and just really self-defeating, and the training was very hard at that point, and I didn't like the training anymore, and that was hard. So it was trying to look at it in a different way.
That's really interesting. Yeah, the whole mental health side of sport is it's growing more and more each year as we see nowadays, but it's something that I've noticed in like other athletes I've come across, and it seems to be the younger ish to an extent, obviously, that you get involved with like MPC, mental performance coach, or some sort of mental coaching platform and such. It really helps kids and young adults internalize that, hey, it's okay, I'm like, take a step back, let's find the love of what we're doing again, and then, like you said, get back in your training regimen, start one step at a time. The goal doesn't happen all at once, right? So that's awesome.
Exactly.
And you mentioned you had some pretty intense anxiety, it sounds like, during competition or before competition. Was that something that kind of came up like right after a competition and led all the way to the next one, or is it something that, the days upcoming to a new competition, that it would kind of start up on you?
Yeah, that's a great question. It was mostly to do with I think if I can kind of cast my mind back, it wasn't too much. It would be anxiety around things, or maybe even just like dread around things,
Yeah.
that it didn't necessarily carry over, but it would be the day of, like, or the day before, specifically the 200 breaststroke. Like the 200 breaststroke it's like a race that takes about 2 minutes 30 to 3 minutes long, depending. And it's one of those ones that's just like, it's not a sprint, but it's not a distance event. So you're kind of in the middle. And that was my main event when I was younger. And so I just always remember the day of the 200 breaststroke, or the day before, or until that race was done within the meet. Usually swim meets were either 2 or 3 days long. Until that event was done, I was just a lot of dread and anxiety and fear around that race, and knowing that you're going to put yourself through pain. Yeah, it would be usually with meets like that, it would be within the meet. And then for training and things like that, it would be, I guess, the time leading up to practice, like just, and
Right.
getting there on deck and pushing yourself to like get into a swimsuit, and here we go again, And so, yeah, it would kind of come up and down throughout the days, I would say.
Wow, that's a lot to deal with at once, especially during the teenage years. And I imagine that must have built some self-discipline in yourself quite a bit during those years, I'm assuming.
I think so. My parents really drove that into us from a young age of like seeing things through to the end. They didn't force us to swim, of course. But it was just, yeah, it was kind of one of those things of like, okay, here's a challenge to overcome. How do you fix it? And how do you navigate it so that it's better, instead of just, okay, like stop with that, go to something else, because you'll probably just come into the same issues again. So it was difficult, but at the same time, having, a mental performance consultant on your side also was really helpful, because sometimes in these contexts, well, a lot of the times athletes, even if they're older, they'll keep going until someone tells them to stop. And so my consultant was like, Charlene was really great, because she appreciated and recognized that sometimes it's not all just go, go, go. Like sometimes the best thing to do is take a break. And there were some times when I was a bit older, like 16 or 17, I can't quite remember, but I ended up taking months off, and just, we knew I was going to come back, but we weren't sure exactly when. We weren't sure what that would look like. We weren't sure how I would feel like if I really wanted to go back. And in the end, I didn't really feel like, yeah, I really want to get back in the pool and get back to training. But the time had been long enough, and she guided me through that to be like, well, you've spent your time. I don't think you're ever going to really feel like you really want to go back to the pool, but I think we should give it a shot and see how you feel easing yourself back into it. And so things like that, like having somebody to kind of guide through that. Yeah, it's not always about pedal to the metal, grind through it all the time. Like breaks are really important. And sometimes for people, the sport maybe just isn't your sport. Like if you
Yeah.
really stick with it and you're just like, yeah, I really just don't like it. Like, and you feel like that for a long time, then like there's nothing wrong with stopping and doing something else, really.
100%.
And so I truly believe that too. And I'm not here to just say like, yeah, no matter what, stick with it. Like that's there's definitely appropriate times to be like, that's enough, or take a break, or change something for sure.
Yeah, and like you said, like burnout's real. We know that.
Yeah.
The break you said you took, that, and like I don't know if I'll ever really want to go back into this pool, want to get back into the training. And sometimes it's just, I assume at least it's sometimes that person, perhaps it was Charlene in this case, where let's just get you back in the environment. Let's see how you feel when you're
Yeah.
back there. And even though you're not there right now, if you get back in and you're still there, then we can figure out what's next. But
Yeah.
that's really cool. With those, like those practices of discipline and just practices of getting back into it, not giving up, and all obviously taking care of yourself at the same time. Did those kind of transfer to your balancing act of succeeding in academics and being a student athlete, like as you went to the university stage?
For sure. I think it's one of those things that I'm actually struggling with now as a retired athlete, but when it was really busy, busy, busy all the time, like those are environments I think that lots of athletes can relate to and that they're used to. So you're just used to always having something to do, always having somewhere to be, having those structures also laid out for you, like your classes, you decide like in university your classes, but there's a structure to it, like a schedule. So those classes are at these times, your training is at these times, and then you kind of fit in, okay, homework here, nap time here, food
Yep.
prep here, whatever it might be. And so yeah, it really just, you start that from a young age, because like I said, we started doing morning swims and having doubles when I was about 12 years old, and at that point, like I was in school then too. And so it really just, you kind of get, I like to use the word like brainwashed into it a little bit from a young
Yep.
age, and it's just all you've ever known. So it becomes very normal just to have all these things, having to stay on top of them all the time. Really, there's ebbs and flows to the season. Of course, like summer was great because it was a lot of the time, I was fortunate in that I was pretty much just swimming and I didn't have to get a summer job. So those were great because it was no school and just
Yeah.
swimming, focusing on that, and having fun with friends and catching up kind of on that social aspect, because you miss out on a lot of that throughout the season. So
Oh,
yeah, it's a balancing act for sure.
100%. And then so kind of get jumping ahead a bit to, I want to talk to you about the Rio Olympics in
Mhm.
2016. So just kind of to get a sense of, I'm not super familiar with swimming. I did my, up to level 6 or level 8 or whatever it is to
Yeah.
make sure I could handle myself in the water. But I'm
Yeah.
interested. I love hearing about how people train. It's so different from sport to sport. Yeah, there's some similarities with warm-ups and dynamics and all that. But can you describe, maybe specifically, if you can remember, back to that training regimen, what it was like to prepare for the Olympic Games?
Absolutely. I think that's such an interesting thing too. Like sports vary so much. And so, yeah, I changed my training regime a lot. And so for context, the 2016 Olympics were in August of 2016. I graduated from university from Texas in December of 2015 and moved back home to Lethbridge in like that end of December, early January of 2016 to go and train at home. I always, so I would say I'll give kind of a spiel about the two training structures that I had when I was at university at SMU, and then when I came home, because I think they both contributed to what happened
Yeah, please
with me
do.
making the team and everything. And so um yeah, so I always went back when, like I said, I went to school, I went to university, and then during the summer I would always come back home to Lethbridge to train with LASC. And at that time, Brad Morey was the coach when I left to go to university, and then now Peter Shorey, who's in place right now as well with the Horns and LASC as the head coach. He was there mostly for the majority of the years when I came back. to train in the summer. And we kind of recognized, I made my first national team in 2015, my first senior national team ever. And so it was very good timing, and in the 100 breaststroke too. So it was different because again, my event was mostly the 200 up until that point. And so we kind of were like, hey, wait a minute, maybe I should adjust my training a little bit to be more focused on the 100 instead of the 200. And so Peter and I had a little chat about that in the summer of 2015. And so when I went back to university for the 2015-ish season, I kind of had an idea of the training, because at that point I had finished my NCAA eligibility, but I was still swimming with the Mustangs, so SMU Mustangs. I was still training with the university group, but not competing with them anymore. And because I was in that position, I was able to kind of tailor the training a little bit. I had a little bit more flexibility because I technically wasn't quote like on the teams. So I changed my training a little bit. And so the structure of training while I was at SMU was 10 swims a week, 2 cardio sessions like on the elliptical because my joints can't handle impact with running. 2 sessions on the elliptical, 2 strength training sessions, and then 2 dryland sessions. And I think at that point we were even doing a med ball session after Saturday morning practice. So we were doing about 16 or 17 workouts a week individually. And so it was very busy at that time. And when I switched to training more into the 100-meter breaststroke, like it's a short race, it only takes about a minute plus to finish. And so I would take liberties and take some of those practices out because I didn't feel like I really, and I was at the age, I was like 22, 23 at the time, that I felt like I had enough knowledge in what I needed that I would take some of those practices off because it just felt like too much. So so that was kind of the structure before I left and went back home in January of 2016. And so when I moved back home with Lethbridge, the training schedule was a little bit different. And I talked to Peter about it and kind of how we would approach it as we were leading into Olympic trials. And so then I was swimming 8 times a week and lifting 3 times a week. And then I think we were doing yoga once a week as well. And so that was a good balance. It kind of brought down the training volume quite a bit, which was nice because the training with SMU was very different than what it was with LASC and the Horns. And I think it worked really, like the timing worked really well. And I know that it worked really well because I found great success. And so, yeah, it kind of tailored a bit more to the sprinting mindset. And it was very, very much like, different from the more is more mentality and that less is more, and that it was very much focused on like the time we're doing in the pool is going to be very, very specific to training for the 100 breaststroke, and all the training is going to be kind of centered around that. And so it was very specific. It was very yeah, like just spot on and like really race rehearsal stuff, which was great. And with Lethbridge being, you know, a smaller city, a smaller team, like Peter was able to do that. And there was a lot of other people on the team that race the same things as I do. So of course we were all kind of a group. So yeah, leading into the Olympic trials and the Olympics, that's essentially what we did. I think I had a little bit of like TRX work in there with which is like the stuff on, it's kind of like
bands.
Bands, yeah.
And they're like straps almost, I guess.
Exactly, yeah, straps. And so it like core work essentially. And so we did some more of that too. And so yeah, once the Olympic trials happened, I swam well there and like well enough to make the team, which was great. And so we kind of thought, okay, how do we do better than that? And I went a best time. And so it was like, how do we get to the Olympics and do better than that? And so Peter did a great job. Like we talked about it, and swimming is a very detail-oriented sport. And so we focused in on some of the, you know, the smaller things like with turns and with the stroke. And we kind of kept the race strategy the same, but it was more of those really fine details. And then as you get to the end of your race, you know, you're getting tired, things are kind of falling apart. So we practiced how not to fall apart as much as possible as well. And things like that. So yeah, we adjusted just a little bit, like minor tweaks and things like that, but we knew what we were doing was working really well. So we didn't want to to make any major changes. And so kept that training structure going into the Olympics. And of course, going into major meets, like I'm sure it is with most sports, you taper. And so we would had taper structures, and they usually started about 6 weeks out, and we would it wasn't everything all at once, like drastic, but just that would be when it started and slowly ebbed into being less and less meters and kind of more intensity going into meets. But yeah.
Wow, that's extremely interesting. Couple things that came to mind while you were talking about that is you mentioned you do some lifting with your training. I'm just
Yes.
curious. I'm assuming it's a lot of legs, a lot of back, or is there some other stuff? Like what kind of muscle groups are you working, or what lifts does a
Yeah. Well, and that was one of the big things. Like when I was at SMU, we had a very kind of general, because we were a big team, so we had a pretty general weightlifting program. And so when I came home, the weight program that I got was very tailored to me. And so that was great. And I got to learn how to do hang cleans, power cleans, things like that
Oh,
that
yeah.
were really whole body, because swimming is your
Everything.
entire body.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so lots of that connection with sprinting power stuff, so explosiveness and the timing of that and how you want it to coincide with the training that you're doing in the pool was important as well. And so yeah, it was like with breaststroke is for me a very leg driven stroke, and so we did a lot of leg stuff, and lots of that I think comes also just naturally having a genetic component to it as well is great. But we
Of
did
course.
a lot of leg stuff, and but really it was a lot of whole body. Like we did core, upper body, lower body, and we all the workouts we did were centered around making sure that the entire body was worked. Yeah.
Wow, that's super cool. It really is when I think about it. It's a full, like you're trying to think, oh, is this muscle group? No, that's engaged. Yep, that's engaged. Everything.
Yeah, everything, core and all
Oh
that.
yeah,
Yeah.
core is extremely important, I can imagine.
Yeah.
And then with your in pool training, I'm just kind of, this is me being curious at this point, but I know a lot of sports you do a lot of reps of certain, like so golf, if you're doing a chip shot, you do 100 200 chip shots in a row. You're not
Mhm.
playing 200 rounds of golf, right? So
Mhm.
with your turns when you're swimming and then you get to the wall and you have to kick and turn around, is
Yeah.
that something that's just kind of built into the whole swimming, or would you just do a kick and then come back and then practice
Yeah,
over and
good
over again?
question. Yeah, so in the sets that you do with swimming, like usually the main focus of a set is focused on a certain component of a race.
Okay.
And so you're working that system again to try to not fall apart as much as
Yeah.
possible and stay composed. But to say though, like one of the unique things and things that I really liked about swimming in Lethbridge and with the program that Peter had was that every Wednesday we had kind of like a skills day, and it was called a circuit day. And
Okay.
so it was different stations that you would do just that. Like you would just go like 10 or 15 meters away from the wall and then just practice swimming in and out those 10 or 15 meters and practicing the turn. And so you would just do the turn, and you would do that, over and over again. I wouldn't be a hundred times because you would lose your mind, but it was,
Exactly.
yeah, like you would repeat that over and over again. Or dives, like we would do a lot of stuff with dives, and the underwater component off of a dive is in breaststroke it's called a pull out. And so normally you in every other stroke you do dolphin kicks and a streamline, but in breaststroke you do this sequence that's called a pull out. And so practicing that, because I'm not very good at them, I never really was, and so practicing those and how to get those really good. And then another thing we did with the circuits, which was huge, was video. And so every Wednesday Peter would take video, and he would kind of choose and give us some options about what we would like to have video, whether it's parts of swimming and our stroke, parts of our underwater, parts of our turns, those kinds of things. And so every Wednesday we would look at video and do video analysis, and Peter would sit with us, each one of us, and was so diligent and took the time to talk to us. And I'm sure for him, every week it was like the same problems came up every single time. He's like, I'm saying the same things to you guys. But it was really good that way too. So video analysis was a really big part of that too.
That's cool. I mean, it makes sense now that you say that.
Yeah.
The video component, that's one of the biggest ways I've learned throughout my
Yeah.
life as well.
Yeah. I think
It's
lots of
really
athletes are
cool.
visual, right? And so
Yeah.
it's nice to
You
see.
think you're doing it right. Like, no, I did that. I swore I did that dive.
Yeah.
Like I felt it. And then you see
Yeah.
yourself on video and you're like, I'm crazy. I don't know what I'm
Yeah.
doing. Yeah, right. So
Yeah.
and then kind of still thinking about that timeline, maybe let's go towards that buffer period, right? Kind of when you're slowing down your training and doing the increments lower right before that 6 week period out before the Olympic Games.
Mhm.
Did you and you were still working with Charlene at that time?
Yep. Hmm.
Yeah, and so what did you guys work on, like just the mental side of things in terms of preparing?
Oh gosh. Yeah.
Just pick one if it's too much to think about.
Yeah. I'm trying to think, what did we focus on? I think at that point, like a lot of the heavy lifting in terms of things to improve your swimming from a mental standpoint had kind of been done. So like the tools, like those things in practice that you like those goals that you input, like those, you're kind of there. And that's like an ongoing thing of just holding
Yeah.
yourself accountable with those things. And so it was more the things that we more worked on then was I think it was just reassurance that
Gotcha.
everything, no matter what, was going to be okay. Um, and just controlling the emotions around it, because like I didn't going through it the first time, like I've gone through too many Olympic trials, and that was the first time that I seriously like took it serious. And so I didn't know like that I was going to not be able to sleep 4 weeks out, right? And so at around the 4 week, 5 week mark, like you whether it's excitement, anxiety, whatever you might want to call it, a mixture of everything, thinking about, the day, what you could have done in practice, what you could have done better, et cetera, managing those kinds of things. And just like, if I'm not sleeping, and having this snowball effect of like, then come like a month from now, I'm going to be a total zombie and I'm not going to be able to and so it's just managing those kinds of things that came up. And I would meet with her. I think I met with her like probably every week, if
Yeah.
not every other week for sure, going into things just even to check in. Like sometimes the meetings would even just be like 15-20 minutes, just say like, how are things going? Are you okay? Like, let me know, has something come up? I remember getting frustrated with people because, and not because of them, but they would just every single day leading into Olympic trials, they say, how are you feeling today? How are
Yeah.
you feeling today? And it's just, I just got so tired of answering that. Like, I don't know, like
Yeah.
stressed. Like, what do you want me to say? And stuff, like little things. It was just managing those things. And if like a practice didn't go super well, just knowing like on the balance that it's okay to have some days that are like during taper, when your body is so used to being under so much fatigue and stress. When you taper your body, we call it kind of in swimming the taper blues, of you just feel off if something's not
Okay.
quite right, and that can be really disconcerting while you're going, because then you feel like I need to do more, and then
Yeah.
you're exhausted by the time you get to a meet. And I'm sure lots of athletes can relate to that. And so managing that as well. And Peter was so good with that too, like, because Charlene was a big component, but day in and day out, practice by practice, Peter did. And that's why I really liked working with Peter, is that he just was so good at he's just so like easygoing. Like he just was just so good. Like, if I'm not worried, Rachel, you don't need to be. And I trusted that so much. And that trust was so important. And so Peter also had a huge part of like just every day, like, we're all good, everything's
Yeah.
good, we're on the course, like you're feeling good, you're looking good, like
You
rest
do what you're
assured.
supposed to
And
do.
it was
Yeah.
just that assurance piece. I think that was the biggest, and not letting things get blown out of proportion. Because like obviously going into an Olympic trials, you don't know what's going to happen. And so just knowing that no matter what happens, good or bad, like you're going to survive, and life will continue to go on, and the
Yeah.
world will spin, and you'll deal with things, ups or downs. So
Yeah.
yeah, so that was that. I think that was, if I can remember correctly, that was pretty much. I have notes from, because I have books. I would
Oh,
write
of
things in
course.
Australian. I should have looked at those before we met, because
You're
there's
good.
some gems in there.
A lot of that control what you can control mentality, it sounds like.
Yes,
Yeah,
yeah,
that's awesome. And then kind of a fun question. I read that you might have had some interesting pre-race routines, such as like a favorite meal or rituals. Is there any, do you want to touch on anything like that you did or the
Yeah. What with with eating, like I love eating. So swimmers are kind of, I think, famous for being known to have like massive appetites, and it's true. And so with eating, it was just I just ate a lot of the times normally what I would eat going into a meet. I would eat things that like, and I get asked that a lot of like, what do you eat at a swim meet? And I'm like, just eat what you normally eat. Like
don't
don't do
screw with your
something
body?
special. Yeah,
Yeah.
because you're gonna throw yourself off and your GI is gonna be a mess. So
Exactly.
so yeah, just like the good old like, you know, spaghetti, carbs, or just living off those. And so, yeah, kind of holding true to the course with those kinds of things and making sure you're eating things that you know are like, hopefully won't upset your stomach. Um, I remember that Olympic trials was one of the only times in my entire life when I can say like I woke up the morning of the race, the 100 breaststroke, and I couldn't eat, and so I kind of forced myself to eat something for breakfast, but it was one of those weird moments where I was like, nope, like barf, I can't eat anything this morning. And I've never really felt that, even at the Olympics, like I didn't feel that. So yeah, that's one of them. And then just yeah, pre-race routines, like I just you just baby yourself a lot, like making sure you get all your good naps in. Like if you're on the fence about this thing that'll help with recovery or going out with friends, like just focus on recovery, like what's going to make you happy, what's going to make you gonna add up to a good race. And so making sure you do all dot all those I's and cross all those T's, and which I kind of liked, because then if anybody asked me to do anything, it'd be an excuse to be like, no, can't do that, sorry, I'm tapering. So all those good things. And yeah, so in the days leading up, those are the kinds of things that I would focus on.
Cool. That's really interesting. Yeah, it's always it seems to be just an athlete thing. I think the pre-race or pre-event or pre-game, whatever it is, there's always some sort of routine. Or lots of people, I like you said, the pre-game nap or pre-race naps. Those are big.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and
Just
even
to get
like
yourself ready, right?
yeah, it is. And athletes are such superstitious creatures. Like
Yeah.
and we are such, you know, beings of routine, and we like to have things the same way every time. And what worked in the past is what's going to work this time. And, you know, and so, and I did that this time. And even to the point that it'd be like outfits that I would choose. I'm like, I want to wear this shirt on my important day because it's a little bit softer than my other shirts. And I want
Awesome.
to wear these cool socks because there's Pokemons on them and they'll make me be faster, you know, like whatever. It's like, it's so funny the different things. And the day of like my races, they always at the time, like you're like, I race at this time, and then going back however many hours, the lead up is always it's always the same, you know. And so it's yeah, it's funny like that. Yeah.
100%. And we're a Lethbridge local podcast here, so just kind of touching on just what did the Lethbridge community mean to you when you were preparing for, just as an Olympian? What's your involvement like in the city of Lethbridge at the time when you were competing, and what did you feel like? Was there a sense of community? If you just want to touch on your time in Lethbridge here, what it meant to you.
For sure. I think it's hard not to feel a sense of community in Lethbridge, and in particular because it's a smaller city, and it in Lethbridge at that time, there really was only one major, I'm not sure if it's different now, but only one major competitive swim team in town. And so the community that was made with that was super cool. And so I remember going when I was flying out of Lethbridge to go to the Olympics, and I didn't know that this was happening, but I get to the airport and I can kind of see through the doors a little bit, people scurrying around. I'm like, what the heck's going on? And so I think they thought I was coming through certain doors, and then I was coming through other doors, and there was this whole group of people from
Awesome.
LASC that were there with posters and signs and all this great support that was there for when I was leaving. It was just so nice. Like that meant so much to me that somebody took the time to, and like the group of people took the time to to do that, to organize that, to all come out, like kids, parents, like all kinds of people came to support that. And even leading up to it, like you get special asks to go to, like I remember going to McGrath and doing a swim clinic there, and those kinds of things. Like at that time I wasn't really experiencing in coaching, but you're an Olympian, and still, no matter what, like you can tell them some
Yeah.
good tidbits of for swimming better. And then also it's just the inspiration, right? And so that's one of the, if not the best thing that has come from being an Olympian, is that you get that awe factor from
Mm.
people in terms of inspiring the next generation of athletes. And I think that that's so important. And to just say that, like, especially when it's somewhere like Lethbridge, where you don't need to be at an Edmonton or a
Yeah.
Calgary for these things to happen. It can be, for me, like being in Lethbridge was so important to that. Like I don't know how things would have went if I didn't have that sense of community, that smaller, kind of more tailored approach to my training, my overall care. Because with of course with athletes, it's not just the training, it's everything else, the eating, the physical therapy, massages, mental health support, all of those things. And then of course my family, like my family all lives in Lethbridge, and having my family around during that time, during such a stressful time, was yeah, massive. And you can't, I don't know any other athlete that could say, yeah, I did that all by myself. Like you need that support, and the Lethbridge support. And so I like Lethbridge holds such a place in my heart. Like I can't even say it. It was just so nice. And you go into, like, we train out of the U of L pool, and you'd go in there and everybody kind of knows you. And even if you're not an Olympian, right? Like even if you're
Oh
just
yeah.
a person that goes there like every day, every couple days, to the gym or something like that, everybody's like, oh hey, how's it going? And
Yep.
it just is such a nice sense of community that you don't feel in other cities. So yeah, for sure, it was big, and it was very heartwarming.
That's awesome. Yeah, I agree. I'm a small town kid myself, and it's
Hmm.
it's kind of interesting, like thinking about, like, yeah, if you're Toronto, Vancouver, Calgary, Edmonton, like those are bigger cities. It's, for lack of a better way to say it, you can get lost in those easily as an athlete, right?
Hmm.
It's
Yeah.
a bit more, it's a bit easier to follow that pathway in a smaller group. You have that sense of community, you have that support, you have that group, like you said, your chiro, your massage, your coaching, your mental health, everything's there, and they're there for you, which is
Hmm.
quite an amazing thing to have. And as an Olympian, I'm sure that's quite a special feeling, especially coming in, seeing all those signs, and like you said, that would be
Yeah.
quite awesome.
Super sweet.
Hey everyone, Alex here. I hope you're enjoying the episode so far. I just wanted to take a quick minute to talk to you about some opportunities we provide here at the Lethbridge Sport Council. So we run several programs throughout our community, such as our drop-in youth program, our roving gyms program, and our sport volunteer hub. These help provide inclusive sport access to youth and individuals of all ages and backgrounds. And did I mention that these programs are free of charge? Yeah, you heard me right. They're completely free. Please check out the links in our episode bio if you are interested in learning more about our programs and our volunteer opportunities. And if you want to do your part in providing a platform for our community programs to thrive, donations are greatly appreciated and can be done so by clicking the donations link in our bio. Thanks for listening, and now back to hearing from our Olympians.
And kind of with that, you touched a little bit on just like mentoring and kind of building that next generation. You said, just if you could share an example of any young swimmers you've mentored either recently or throughout your years, or what does that process mean to you, and how does it look like?
Yeah, it's great. Like it's just so cool. It's so much fun. It's one of the best things about it. Like I work with this company called Head to Head, and they are essentially a mentorship company that kind of um pairs up national team athletes slash Olympians with different clubs throughout Canada. It's a national program, and it's not just with swimming; it's with all different kinds of sports. And so with the woman who founded this organization, it was around that time, and so I started working with them, and it's cool because it's a neat program in that you get to do all different kinds of things. So I there's these sessions that I'll do that are kind of 3 hours long, and 2 hours or 1.5 hours is in the water with a group of the kids, and you're doing all kinds of swimming stuff, skills, sets, all kinds of things like that. And so we'll do that. And then we have a classroom session after that they usually get like a little booklet, and it'll focus on like nerves for racing, how to manage that,
Cool.
time management,
Very
all those kinds of things. And so I really like that program. And then also I get, kind of like different asks to come to, like McGrath was a great example. Another team here in Calgary is can't remember what the club is called, but it's essentially a group of Down syndrome folks in town who it's a swim club for them. And so I like that. And they asked me to come and do some sessions with them. And like, I just awesome, like to be able to get to do those kinds of things. Like, I just absolutely love it. So if there's anybody listening that is interested, I'm always happy to do that. But those kinds of things are fun. And then also I get every once in a while, like parents reaching out for just one-on-one sessions, especially if they're breaststrokers, to go over some of the skills and drills and whatever it might be to help them with their breaststroke, just give them some tips. And so, yeah, I love engaging with people on those kinds of things. And even to an extent, like this past summer, I have quite a few old racing suits that haven't been worn before, and so I was selling some of those on Marketplace, and it's people that are like, oh hey Rachel, like
Yeah.
this is so cool. And one of the young kiddos with like through their parents reached out to me to just ask questions about swimming and like how to deal, and like even a connection like that is just awesome, awesome.
Yeah, it really, coaching, mentoring, it's one of those, it really builds a sense of like I'm doing the right thing, I guess, right? It makes you feel like, now I can give back. I had so many people me, and now it's my turn to, it's such a cool process.
Totally.
And with the kids that you mentor, are they a specific age? Is it youth? Is it kind of a little bit older, or is it all over the place?
Yeah, a little bit of a mix. Yeah, I would say that with head to head, it's a really big mix. It's usually from, I don't know, kiddos that are maybe like even as young as 5 all the way
Oh,
up to
wow.
17. And most of the kids that I do work with in the water are a bit older, and they're usually in their teens. Yeah.
Awesome. And then just before we move on to the next section, is there, if you could leave an impact of your legacy on the swimming world or just your community at Lethbridge and Calgary, what would you love to be known for?
I would love to be known for as being a nice person above all else.
That's awesome.
I think that it's athletes sometimes, and athletes can be sometimes viewed as, and they need to be like selfish, and a lot of the times it's true that athletes absolutely need that component of selfishness to be able to excel, and that's not a slight against athletes at all, but it's one thing to be a high performance athlete. It's another thing entirely to be a good person. And so I think that I try to live by those values, and I try to, give back to the community, being available for different kinds of things, to the extent that I can, and just helping out like anybody, willing to talk to anybody, lending an ear. Like I've had a lot of struggles in swimming and being an athlete, and to just try to share those experiences, and that sometimes opens the door so that people feel comfortable to come to me to say like, I'm actually struggling in a similar way, like can you kind of help me navigate that or speak about it with me? And always happy to do those kinds of things. And so I hope that I am kind of known for that. Like swimming is all great and fine, but I really try to live my life with humility and integrity, and willingness to help people if they need it.
Well, that's amazing. I think that just that right there, that speaks volumes to your character and the kind of person that you are. And in my books, and I'm sure all our listeners are going to agree with me, you're bang on. You're right there. You're one of the best people.
Oh, thanks.
It's been amazing so far just talking to you. Kind of hard to move on from that because that was awesome. I loved hearing that. It's really fun hearing high level athletes not be the whole, I want to be known as the gold medalist. I want, it's a nice person. Like that's kind of amazing. Not kind of, it's quite amazing actually.
Oh, thanks.
And just kind of speaking about that, like like we said, highly competitive athletes, there is a sense of you need to be selfish to an extent, and the right time, right place. And we've talked quite a bit about mental health and some challenges that you've been through. We're doing some research. I noticed that the Tokyo 2020 Olympics, you missed the qualifying standard by just 20 or 0.24 seconds.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure that was a tough thing to go through, as I can imagine, if not more than tough. Is there anything you'd like to touch on, like just what that process was like, how you picked yourself back up from that? Because what was it, 3 years later at the Pan Am Games, you won gold. So obviously
Yeah.
you were over it. Just kind of talking about how you moved through that struggle.
Yeah, gosh, it was hard, but for probably for maybe a different reason than one may look from the outside. And so to kind of give context, so after the Rio Olympics, I moved to Calgary to pursue a master's degree. Along that journey, I ran into a physical injury, and of course, classic swimmer, hurt my shoulder, and continued to train on it again. Nobody really told me to stop. So again, we didn't know what was wrong. And so it was kind of one of those things that it was just like, we are like, "Oh, we'll just see if it gets better." And it never did. And so, yeah, so then of course, followed by that, performance went downhill and so did my mental health. And so come upon 2019, and it's the summer of 2019. Next year's it was supposed to be the Olympic year. Of course, the pandemic changed that, but
Yeah.
I was still in my master's program, still training and competing in Calgary. And I decided that with where things were at with my mental health, my physical health, things were not going very well. And so I I decided to move back to Lethbridge. And again, a big push for that was because of my family being there and the support system and that network. And so like my time, I moved back to Calgary after all said and done, and finished my master's degree, and came back to train in Calgary. And I love the coaches here, and the athletes and the team here with U of C. Of course, it's nothing against them that I moved. It just wasn't working for all kinds of different reasons that wasn't their fault. And so so I moved back to Lethbridge, had to deal with the injury, never it was a labrum tear. So with those, you have to get surgery to fix them. But with the Olympics coming up, and Olympic trials, I didn't want to go through the surgery and recover because I didn't think there'd be enough time. So we managed it as best we could. So there was that part of it to overcome, and the mental toll, and then uplifting my life, putting my degree on hold, moving back to Lethbridge, which was good because like I was back with Peter, I was back in that environment that I enjoyed, and back with my family. And also it ended up that I met my fiance as well. So that all worked out
Oh, that's
well in the
wonderful.
end. But
Yeah.
yeah, then the pandemic came along, and then there was for a lot of athletes the question of, okay, am I financially stable enough to be able to continue to train for a whole other year or whatever? At that time, we didn't know when Olympic trials or the Olympics was going to be held, or if it was going to be held at all. And so then I was lucky enough to be in a position that I was able to continue to train and do those things. And it wasn't always in the pool, but that's okay. And so yeah, I went through all these things, and it was with that combination and that thought of like, with Olympic trials in 2021, there was so many things at that time, like you said, control the controllables. That's it. Essentially the poster board for, I think, for that time was just control what you can control and let everything else just. And so I did just that. I did everything that I possibly could to say, when Olympic trials comes, I know that I can look back on that and know that I did absolutely everything that I possibly could to do the best that I could. And like, we couldn't compete, we couldn't race. I had one race in 17 months to get ready for that, and that's it. And so it was very, very challenging. But I like, from my standpoint, I did everything that I possibly could to do that. I took care of my shoulder as best as I could. I took care of my body. I still seeing Charlene, chipped away at my master's as much as I possibly could. All those kinds of things to kind of, make sure when I looked back, like I said, I had no regrets.
Awesome.
And so come Olympic trials for 2021, it was very different than 2016 because of the pandemic, of course. The meet itself was very, very different. There was nobody in the stands. There was nobody there. There was no swimmers, extra swimmers there either, because it was just people who were swimming the event. You get in, you go, you swim your race, you get out, you leave. And so it was very strange. And it was weird. And having had only one race within almost 2 years to get ready for that, for an Olympic trials. And that's the only race that was provided. Like there was nothing else we could do to race more in Alberta. And so that's all we had. And and so you just kind of are like, all right, let's go see
Here we
what
go.
happens. So here we go. And so I swim my race, and in the morning I was going in second into finals, and in swimming you need to get the top, you need to place for like absolute selection, just kind of like black and white selection. You need to get top 2 and under this certain standard, the FINA, the qualifying Olympic qualifying standard. So I was going into second in finals, and that was all good and well. And I was feeling actually pretty good. I didn't think that I would actually even be racing that well at that point. And so given everything, and so I was feeling pretty good for finals, and go in and race my race, and didn't make the qualifying time by 0.24 of a second, which, is devastating in and of itself. But I did feel like, I did everything that I possibly could, again, with that mindset of, and talking with Charlene and preparing for it that way of like, it's okay. Like, no matter what, you're going to be okay. You're going to be fine. You're going to live, and deal with it, with grace and humility. And so there, with swimming, there's certain priorities of selection. And so, like I say, that black and white selection of top 2 and under the standard get to go automatically. So the woman who got first in the race gets to go. She made the standard. She got first, all as well with that. But then there's also discretionary decisions further down the priority list, and they can choose, the high performance director can choose swimmers to go for relays. And so I was hoping that then, okay, if I didn't make the standard, fair enough, that's fine, I can live with that. I know I did the most that I could. If that's how it's going to be, fine. But we don't hear about this until the meet is over, and 100-meter breaststroke was like on the day 3 or something like that. And there's still 5 more days to go of racing, or 4 more days. So I wasn't going to hear for sure that I didn't make the team or did make the team until about 4 days later or something like that. So so then I go home from Toronto. It was in Toronto that we raced, and I'm waiting. And then the selection comes out, and I don't make the team. Again, something that is hard to take, but again, I did everything that I could. And so the difficult thing then, though, was that so as I said, the woman who placed first, made the standard, got first, gets to go. We already knew that. And then there was a hope that I would be chosen for a discretionary choice for a relay. That didn't end up happening, again, which sucks, but is something that I would be able to live with. No problem, really. Well, not no problem, but you'd get over it eventually. And then, but what was very difficult was I didn't get to go, and I got second, but the woman who got third got chosen to go. So it was very confusing to me. And so, long story short, it ended up being a quite difficult legal dispute with my sport organization after that for about 9 months. It took a very, very, very long time. And so that was the hardest thing about it, is that it depending on what, I don't know what side you're on, how you view that, how you I didn't think it was fair going through this very difficult process of the sporting dispute after was also incredibly, incredibly hard, let alone, not making the Olympic team. And again, that's something that if that had happened and it was we're just sending the one gal who got first, fine. But I just didn't feel that it was right that they chose the person who then got third as well. So long legal dispute after that. And so while that was going on, training up until that point was similar to what it was in 2016, but I was like 5 years older. And so my body was not coping with the training quite as well. It was really felt like it was tearing itself apart. And I was really, it was a lot harder to keep my body together and like reduce injury as much as possible, and niggles and things that came up was very difficult to do. So I thought, and with all this going on the legal side and mentally, my brain was just like explosion. So I moved back to Calgary to finish my master's degree at my then boyfriend, now fiance. We moved in together in Calgary because he started a master's program at U of C as well. And I came back to Mike Blondell, who's the head coach of U of C here, who I trained with previously when I moved for my master's the first time. And I said, like, listen, Mike, I would like to still swim for, you know, the social aspect, the fitness aspect, like staying in health. I like, my master's is in kinesiology, so it's like kind of from a health standpoint of just, I just want to stay in the water, keep my body active. I think if I took that piece out, I would go completely nuts. So Mike was fantastic. He welcomed me with open arms, and I said, like, I think I can just do evenings. I like train in the evening and not do mornings anymore. Like I can't, I need to sleep, but my brain is just so kind of injured at this point that I just need that sleep. And he was so understanding, and in swimming on Saturday morning is a big thing. And so we always swim on Saturday morning. And I said, I just, for my body, like, it just feels like it physically, it's not coping with the training very well anymore. Is it okay if I take Saturday completely off and have the full 2 days to recover and come back strong the following week? And he was great. Like he said, absolutely. Like, you kind of come and do a little bit of like what you want. And the team was so inviting as well. And so, so kind to me, so welcoming. And so, yeah, then you know, all of this legal stuff was going on. I was doing my master's, and then I was just swimming and kind of tootling along in the pool. And I was able to kind of, I didn't do really like any strength that year either. I was just like, I just couldn't face the gym for some reason. I just didn't want to go. And so then I just was taking it easy on that front. And I really literally was just swimming for 5 times a week, and that's it. And for some reason, it worked out pretty well. And I was able to make the national team that summer to go to Worlds in 2022. And so that was awesome. Like, I think it was just one of those things that like happened to work out. After an Olympic year, a lot of the times there's a bit of a lull in swimming. Like, it wasn't the strongest nationals that we ever had in the history of nationals. So I think I just kind of got lucky as well. And it all worked out really, really okay. And that helped me to kind of feel better and come to terms with things, with whole dispute stuff, and still working with Swimming Canada, because then I got involved in athlete advocacy that way as well, in a volunteer capacity. So anyways, that's a very long answer to your question, but I think it was just the move, the change, coming back to Calgary, having Mike be so understanding. If I had to come and swim and do a regular schedule of like 8 or 9 swims a week, like I just would have been like, no way, man. Like, can't do that. I wouldn't have continued. I probably would have stopped at that point. And so yeah, it just happened that I had some really good people around me to help me with that, and lots of good, still working with Charlene, so lots of good mental health support in my family. And then I was also living with my fiance, and that was really helpful too. He was really, because he's not an athlete, and so it gave me a really good fresh perspective on like how to live life. And so that was super helpful as well.
Help take that pressure off. That, you know, sport is amazing, we love it, but it's not the end all be all. It doesn't define us, who we are, right? There's a lot more to life than just sport.
Exactly.
Sport's pretty dang fun. So
yeah.
Wow, that's an amazing story. I never really put it together in my head, I guess, before this, that it was the COVID Olympics. Of course it was, but just that change in regimen and change in just you show up to your event or to your meet, and it's everything's different. The environment's different. Yes, the water's still the water, you're still the swimmer, but everything else has changed. That makes a lot of sense as to why it might, like, you know, things are different that year. And I didn't know about the third place finisher going. That's an interesting thing. We don't have to get into that. If we do another talk, we can definitely get into that, because that's something that seems a little unfair to me just from hearing it firsthand. But here you are now, and you came back out on top. That's what matters, I guess. So
thank you. Yeah. So it was a long road, but we
oh yeah, sounds like it was quite the road for sure. so talking about, I mentioned a little bit about just the identity and stuff like that.
Mhm.
Do you just, what does it mean to have represented Canada at the Olympics, to represent a country that is so intertwined, has so much diversity, and I guess just what did it mean to put that maple leaf on your chest and represent our country?
Yeah, it means the world. Like I even on a smaller scale, like we were just me and my fiance were leaving to go to the UK just last month, and he hasn't traveled as much, and so I said, make sure that you get like a little tag to put on your backpack that has like a maple leaf or something on it, like a Canadian flag or whatever. And I was like, people appreciate it. Like, trust me, like it helps.
Goes
With
goes away.
traveling and just that the world like the world's perception of Canada as being like very like friendly neighborhood kind of country, and stereotypes come from somewhere, right? And so it is such a point of pride to represent a country that is, well viewed on the international scale, and respected, but also that, is does like if I can, I don't know if I can say like kicks ass on
Oh yeah.
this
Oh
podcast,
yeah.
but yeah, that just kind of kicks ass on the sporting scale too. Like does like we just in Paris did such incredible things. Like it's so cool to be part of a country that is has that combination of being known as a friendly country, but also like up there, up and
Yeah.
coming, like doing good, like
We're not
good in the
just nice,
sport
but we
field.
can compete with the best of them.
Yeah,
With the
yeah,
best of them.
exactly. So it's super, super, super cool, and just to be, yeah, like that diversity point too of people representing Canada, and that it is like we're all Canadians, but that a lot of people bring so many different cool cultures to it as well. Like that's such a point of pride as well, and that people traveling feel welcome here, people moving here feel welcome here. Like that's such an important piece to it as well, and on a broader scale. And so yeah, it's super cool, and like the maple leaf itself is being just such a striking thing to like for us. We have our swim caps and our suits, and it's just like you just stamp a little maple leaf on there and everybody immediately knows like that's Canada. Like that's so cool.
Yeah. It I bet you that's a, to a lot of kids that's a dream come true, right? To represent your country at the world stage, the biggest stage in all of sport. And there's also that transition piece, right? So then you're an Olympian, you're a swimmer, and then you're a master's student, all this at once, and now you've retired. What's that been like? What's that transition? Was there any identity troubles? Was there, like, just talk me through that, what it was like to retire and to make that decision to move on to the next stage of life.
Yeah, I can say the struggles are still kind of ongoing. It's
Yeah.
been I retired in January, and it's now August, and so it's been quite a few months, but not too long. And so I'm still learning how to live life like a I don't know, normal person. And so yeah, the decision to retire was up and down. Like I wasn't sure when to retire. So I finished originally. I thought if all went well with 2020/2021 Olympic trials, I would retire after making the Olympic team and going to the Olympics a second time. That obviously didn't work out. And so then I thought, okay, well, then I didn't have really any idea. And then I made the national team in 2022, and I thought, okay, maybe that would be a good time to retire after that. And I kind of was committed to that for a little while, and I started looking because I finished my master's degree, and I became a certified clinical exercise physiologist, and I was felt like I was kind of ready for, maybe taking a peek into that world and working in that field. And so I was looking for jobs and doing interviews and things like that. And I was just like this, I don't know about this. Like it all doesn't seem that exciting. I don't know. And so maybe I just wasn't ready. But then I called Mike up in August, and our season starts in September. And I was like, hey, Mike, I changed my mind. I'm gonna keep swimming for the next year. And he just laughed and laughed on the phone, and we had a good chuckle about that. So then I continued to swim and ended up making the Pan Am team for the 2023 Santiago Games. And so my very first team that I ever made was in 2015 for the Toronto Pan Am Games. And so the big question before I made that team was whether I wanted to go to 2024 Olympic trials or not. Like, did I want to see that season all the way through and go to yet another Olympic trials, try for the team, you know, because I wouldn't, and like some people said, well, you could just go to it and you know, not have any expectations and just have fun. And it's like, I know myself, and now before I could do that when I didn't make the Olympics, but now I wouldn't be able to do that. So I would, if I were going to do it, I would do it with the expectation or you know, the drive to try to make the team. So
Yeah.
I took a long time to kind of decide and think about whether Santiago, like going to Pan Am's, was maybe it. And maybe that would be a really nice bookend, because it full circle. Like, I started out bright-eyed, bushy-tailed, eyes wide open on the national team 2015 Pan Am's, and then to go through all of this stuff and come out the other side and be on top, making another national team. I'll be at, you know, an international event. I didn't know how it was going to go, like whether it went well or, you know, because it was mediocre or whatever. Maybe that would be a good place to stop, because you're on a national team and things are good, and kind of ending on a high note. Whereas Olympic trials, if it goes well, like great, but Olympic trials itself is really, really hard. Like, it's such a hard meet. It's such a hard meet to go to. It's such a hard meet to prepare for. It's so stressful. And I was just at this point, having gone through all the stuff with the dispute and having seen both sides of making the team, not making the team, in the end, I just decided, like, I was pretty sure before I went to Pan Am Games that that was kind of going to be it. I wanted to give myself the chance after Pan Am's was done to continue to train a little bit to just make sure I was sure. But yeah, I talked to Peter, my coach from Lethbridge, about it. I talked to Mike, my coach here, about it. Talked a lot, Charlene, of course, lots of family and friends about it. And it really did just feel like the next step of my life was there. Like, I was done with school. I know I didn't want to do anything else with school. And I know I always need something else to do than just swimming. Because again, I go a little bit crazy if because you're used to that bam, bam, bam schedule all the time. And so not having that, like, I was working part-time at a job while I was getting ready for Pan Am's and stuff. And so I was like, I think I'm just ready to, like, see those other things in life, of just like my fiance and I got engaged. Like, we were getting ready for that. I was working part-time and, you know, making some decent money, and I was like, maybe, like, it'd be nice to, athletes aren't, like, it's great that there's a government program that pays athletes in Canada, fantastic, but it usually athletes have to supplement that with something else. And so it's like, it would be nice to see what it's like to make, like, you know, good money and like, and just have that kind of pay off as, like, it's different than being an athlete, and that would be kind of cool. And just experiencing those life things of, like, not having to say no to birthday parties and family events and weddings, and because of swimming, and that like, swimming couldn't stop me anymore. And I was really tired of having to sacrifice all of those things. And then also just the body piece, like, my body was just so tired. Like, it was just, even with the training and doing it 5 times a week, I knew, and that worked really well. Like, I knew going into the Olympic year, I know I would have to work a bit harder and have to put in more time and more effort, and be on top of all the injuries and all the niggles as they come up, which is really stressful. And so all of those things, I was just like, it just doesn't feel worth it. I know what it feels like to want to do it, and I don't feel like I want to do it. And that's just bottom line kind of how it is. And so that was it. And so I went and competed at Pan Am's. It went really well. I was able to win gold in a couple of events, which was awesome. Like, that's more than I could have ever. I had no expectation of doing that well, but it was kind of a funky meet because it was in October, and usually, like, that's not prime racing time for swimmers. And so if for whatever reason, again, I think I just got kind of lucky and it just worked out well for me at that time, and that I knew that this was probably going to be like something that I'm going to peak for and be done with. So whereas other people were preparing for Olympic trials and the Olympics to come, so the timing of the event was a little bit strange, but yeah, it all worked out great. And I was just like, yeah, like I'm good. Like and even while I was at Pan Am's, I was like, yeah, like I don't feel the same way about this as I used to. I don't feel like the excitement. I feel kind of more like I just sometimes want to go home and have the comforts of home and have my like cup of tea in the morning and just chill out, you know? So
Yeah.
anyways, it's that all worked out well. I feel really, really good about that decision, even post Olympic trials and post Olympics. Like I'm really glad I didn't continue on to go and do that. It like great for the people that did. That's awesome. Like so much respect for people that do that, because it's so hard. And yeah, it's just not something that I really wanted to be a part of anymore. And I feel really good about it. And the transition has been hard. Like there's been a lot of different kinds of struggles that I've had. The identity piece is kind of part of it. I think what's more difficult is that being an athlete, like the two things that I think I've struggled with the most is just pieces of like athlete DNA, as we call them, like is the perfectionism, and that nothing will replace swimming in terms of where I can focus that laser focus on anymore, and that dedication and that that feeling. And so that's been difficult because work doesn't replace that. Like work is very different, and like that, like it's not the same
Yep.
as sport. And so I feel like I kind of tried to do that, and that doesn't work. And so that's been difficult, and how to gauge that and judge that has been a big learning curve. And also just like decision making has been really difficult. Like it's which sounds silly, but really when you're an athlete, everything is decided for you, absolutely everything, or you make a decision based off of swimming, off of
Yeah,
your sport,
exactly.
right?
It gives you the template and you fill in the boxes, right? Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And so like making decisions about stupid stuff, it's just really hard. Like things
Yeah.
that you'd be like, yeah, like hello, have you not lived life up until this point? It's just like so much second guessing, so much, and like feeling like with swimming, like I knew making choices with that, like what the like again, quote unquote, right way or best way to do that was. Whereas now there is no right way or best way, like for
Yeah.
lots of decisions in life, and sometimes it doesn't even matter, like
Yep.
but that mentality, I've done that for so long that has been a big struggle as well. And so those are kind of the two pieces that I'm still dealing with and trying to navigate. And just on a smaller scale, like the fitness aspect of like, now I thought when I was done swimming, I'd be like, oh yeah, like I can make myself go to the gym and go swim and do
A
exercise.
little tougher, a little
Totally
tougher than you
no.
think, I bet. Yep.
Yeah, and maybe you like can relate to that of just
Oh,
like
yeah,
if
definitely.
yeah, like if it's not scheduled in there, I'm not
Yeah,
going.
it's like, I'm training. Like when I was playing sport, it's like I'm training for hockey, I'm training for baseball, and you were training for swimming, and then it's like, well, there's that competition's gone. I take the gym off today, and then that
Yeah.
day becomes the week, and then the week becomes the month, and then it's 2 years, and you're like, holy crap, what happened? But
Where
it
did the time go?
it's a piece. I'm also a kinesiology major, so it's in the back of your head the whole time. You're like, I
It
gotta
is.
stay active, gotta be energetic, right? So,
Yeah. And the guilt,
oh yeah,
just
yeah, the guilt
because
and the
longevity, like if you don't stay active, it's gonna come back and bite you when you're older. So
yeah, yeah. There's a lot to think about with that, and I mean, you're still quite young, relatively, obviously. So there's lots of life to live. I don't think you,
yes.
as much as we like to see that, yes, sacrifices are made to get to the top, but that doesn't mean that it's over, right? There's
Yeah,
so much more stuff to
absolutely.
experience and to live. And we're getting a little close to the end of our time here, so it's been awesome so far, Rachel. Just one last piece of advice I'd like to ask you is, what advice would you give some young athletes who maybe are swimmers, maybe are thinking of swimming, or just athletes in general?
Yeah, I would say don't stick to any one kind of mold. Like just because somebody else is doing something a certain way or the majority of people are doing something a certain way doesn't mean that you have to do it that way if it doesn't feel right. Like for me, seeing a mental performance consultant when I was 13, like nobody else was doing that. And it felt kind of strange at the time. And I felt like kind of a weirdo because like, why did I need this kind of professional care? But I truly did. And it paid off hugely in the end. And so not everybody's needs are the same. And so make sure that, yeah, you don't, I guess, like, don't conform is maybe what I'm saying,
Yeah.
but yeah, there are certain ways that things need to be done, but a lot of the time, like, if something's not working, change it. If something isn't, yeah, it doesn't seem to be driving with you, like, then do something else. Like, and that applies to like sports too. Like, you don't need to be a swimmer. You can go and do baseball. Like, I don't know, do whatever you want. And so just don't, and within that, like, even if people are training this way and you want to do something different, try it, ask, like, make sure that communication piece is huge as well with coaches. Like, if you're, and the big thing that I always say to groups that I talk to is, like, if you're struggling or have questions or anything like that, talk to people. Like, make sure you talk to somebody, reach out. I know, like, it's a big thing in mental health these days with people getting in touch with you, but there's still, like, still know that there's people in your court that want to help you, and maybe they just don't see it or don't know that you need the help. And so tell them that, tell trusted adults that, tell your coaches that, tell your parents that, or your your guardians that. Like, make sure those lines of communication are open, and that you're not just sitting in, like, misery or pain for months on end, and just talk. So yeah, that's probably the biggest piece of advice.
Well, that is amazing. I can second that. I think those are all great points. And following your dreams is a place that you can go, and maybe your dream isn't what you thought it was when you started, right?
Yeah.
Well, so with that, just gonna give a special shout out from your roots. We want to go and cheer on the Lethbridge Amateur Swim Club as they approach their upcoming season. Of course, supporting the Horns. And yeah, thank you so much for sitting down with me today, Rachel. Your time has been more than gracious of giving it to us at the Sport Council here. So just thank you again from the city of Lethbridge, from Canada, from the Sport Council here. Thank you for sharing your story. And congratulations on an amazing career and for finishing on top of that swimming world.
Thank you. I really appreciate it. And I'm happy to be here. So glad that, we were able to set this up. And if there's ever other topics you want to talk about in the future, for sure, happy to chat. And if there's anybody out there listening that, like I've said before in the chats, that if you're struggling or want to chat about swimming or sports or anything in life, like, I'm an open book. And for sure, thanks for the shout out to LASC and the Horns. Go Horns, go sports. Let's go swimming. And go out and support the athletes. It means, the community means so much to all of us. So really appreciate you having me here, and thank you so much.
Awesome. Thank you. And to all you listeners out there, just remember to subscribe, like, and keep on listening. We'll have another guest on the next time. Thank you very much.